All right, we're up to some more radicalness in our day. We're going to be solving some radical equations. So as we solve radical equations, we need to know some rules. So let's check those out. So we're going to have 4 rules. We're going to follow these 4 rules in every single problem we do. The very first thing we're going to do is isolate the radical. Get the radical all by itself. So you'll understand that a little bit more when we see our examples. After we get the radical on one side and all of the numbers that are near it on the other side that can be moved, that aren't underneath, everything can be moved over to the other side of the equation. We're going to square both sides to undo the radical. We're going to solve for the number, and then we're going to check for extraneous solutions. So what does that mean? That means we are going to check our answer. So when we would do this when we have a variable on both sides. So if we have a variable on both sides, is when we would check. Okay? So what does all this mean? Okay, variable on both sides of the equal sign, we have to check our answer, check for extra solutions. Okay, so let's look at this first problem. What's under the radical? That's the very first thing you need to determine. What is under the radical? Just the x is underneath the radical, okay? So everything else, everything else needs to move to the other side of the equation, okay? So how do we do that? How do we solve this so that the square root of x is by itself? Well, we undo it like we did in chapter 2. We know how to do that, okay? What am I going to add to this positive 3? I'm going to add a negative 3 to both sides of my equation. Remember, that's always an addition step. I'm just adding either a positive number or a negative number. This will zero out, so what do I have left on this side? The square root of x, okay? 8 minus 3 is 5. Okay, now my next step, my second step, do I have the radical all by itself? I do. I just have radical x all by itself. Now I need to undo my radical sign, so I need to square both sides. So I'm going to square this, and I'm going to square this. That'll cancel that. So I have x on this side, and I have 25 on this side. I am done. Okay? Let's check our answer. Let's check our answer. Why not? So if I take my original equation and I put the square root of 25 in here, because that's my x. Square root of 25 is 5 plus 3 equals 8. 8 equals 8. Sure does. It checks. It would be a very, very good idea for you to check these answers, especially as you're doing this for the first time. Okay, so now with that said, look at this one. What is under the radical in this one? Think about that. Separate your equation. If it makes it easier to put the radical in a box like I did on that first one, do that. Okay, what's not in the box? The minus 5. Okay, how do I take care of the minus 5 and move it to the other side? Okay, add 5, fantastic. That will give me the square root of x minus 4. Okay, So if I have the square root of x minus 4, then how do I handle that? What do I need to do? Oh, what do I have over here? I didn't finish that. 11. Okay. How do I get my x minus 4 alone? What's my next step? Square both sides. So I'm going to square this, and I'm going to square this. This will cancel that. I'd really like to see that arc go through that so that we know it's gone. Okay? And I get x minus 4 on this side. And what's 11 squared on the other side, 121. Okay? Now, I'm not done yet because now x isn't by itself, so I have to keep going. What am I going to do to get my x by itself? Add 4 to both sides. X equals 125. That's your answer. Okay? Good? Good. Okay. Now, look at this next example. Look at this next example. My root is all by itself. My root is all by itself. So, we learned a while ago, I don't remember what chapter it's in, a fact about roots. Roots can never be equal to what kind of number? A negative number. Correct. Okay. So, this is going to be no solution. I'm going to show you why. I'm going to show you why. Okay? So the square root of x equals negative 4. If I square this and square this, that'll get rid of that. So then x is going to be equal to 16. Okay, so let's check that answer. The square root of 16 is equal to negative 4. Okay? What's the square root of 16? It is 4. Does 4 equal negative 4? It does not. And that is why this answer is no solution. So every single time you see a negative number over here, and there's nothing else under the radicand, you're done. If it were a problem like this, and you had a negative number over here, you'd have to check. You'd have to check, like number 4, okay? So, here's a problem that you might have an extra answer. There's an x on this side and an x on this side. So we are going to check this out, and we're going to see how to do this. So, step number 1 is our radical isolated. Yep, a radical is isolated. Great. Step number 2, square both sides. Okay, I'm going to square both sides. Square that, square that. Okay, after I square that, this goes away. What do I have left on the left side? 2x plus 3. And that is equal to, now, x squared. Okay? So now, I need to get all my x's on one side. Okay? So, I guess the easiest would be to subtract this, because that way I won't have to move 2 things. This is going to 0, and I'm going to get negative x squared. What kind of 2x is this? Positive 2x plus 3. And that's equal to 0, because that's zeroed out. Now, this should look familiar to you. You should be able to figure this out. You should be able to figure out both these solutions. So you could possibly do it by diamond and box. You can always do it by the quadratic formula. I tend to do quadratic formula on these problems because there's a lot of them where you can't do diamond and box. And so I would do the quadratic formula, plus we haven't practiced it for a while. So, what's my A, what's my B, what's my C? What's my A? What number is in front of my x squared? -1. What number is in front of my B? 2. What number is my C? 3. Okay, fantastic. Remember, quadratic formula is opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. This line being super long and being underneath everything on top is super, super, super important. If you mess that up, you're going to mess up your calculation. Okay, so let's figure that out. Let's plug and chug. Opposite of b, well, that's -2. Plus or minus 2 squared minus 4 times a, which is -1, times c, which is 3. And all of that is over 2 times -1. Okay, moving right along. Let's do the math. Okay, we get -2 plus or minus, I'm going to start writing a little smaller, 4 whoops, I don't want to necessarily put that there. -4 times -1 is +4. +4 times 3 is 12. +12, so that turns to a plus sign, divided by -2. Okay, 4 plus 2 is 16. So I've got -2 plus the square root of 16 over 2. And I've got -2 minus the square root of 16 over 2. And I know that that's 4. So I've got -2 plus 4 over 2. Ooh, that's a -2. Good catch. -2 plus 4 is 2 divided by -2 gives me -1. Okay? Or I have -2 minus 4 divided by -2. -2 minus 2 is minus 4, 5, 6 is -6 divided by -2, which would make that +3. Okay? So we just did the math there. We just chugged out an answer. Now, here's my question. Do both of these work? Can x be equal to -1? Nope. X cannot be equal to -1 because in our original problem, we cannot have a -1 here for this x. Okay? We cannot have the square root of 2x plus 3 equal to -1 because it would be no solution. So -1 doesn't work, but 3 would. And we would be able to figure out to make sure that that works. And so if this is equal to a negative number, our answer is always going to be we're always going to cross that out, and we're going to have one answer. If they're both positive, on the other hand, you're going to have both positive answers. Okay, so I've already worked in some examples for you to try. I'd like you to come with these 3 problems finished to get full grade for your notes. So think about what you're doing, use your notes to undo these. Okay, this one's like number 1. This one's like number 2. And this one, ooh, what's different about these? 2 times the square root of x plus the square root of x. What can I do with those? Think about that. They're like terms. They're like terms. So think about what's going to happen. How many square roots of x are you going to have? What's this number equal to 12? And then I would divide this number off. So I'm going to give you that as a hint. That's my only hint on number 7. And come with those finished. God bless.